Hey everyone, welcome to Social Studies. Thanks for tuning in. Let's start today by recapping what we talked about yesterday. So for a bell ringer, who is James K. Polk and what role did he have in Manifest Destiny? And then what happens with Great Britain and Oregon? So James K. Polk was a presidential candidate who wins. And he wins because he's all about Manifest Destiny. Remember, his slogan was 5440 or fight, meaning that we wanted the land at 5440 of Oregon, which was up here, right? And that we didn't want to split it with Great Britain. And people elect James K. Polk as president because that's how much we believed in Manifest Destiny at the time, that we were willing to fight over it. So James K. Polk defeats Henry Clay. Poor Henry Clay. That guy just keeps running for president and never wins. And he's a name that just keeps coming up, but he's forgotten in history because he's kind of always the number 2 guy. But anyway, James K. Polk, he gets elected on his slogan, 5440 or fight, which ends up being all for Manifest Destiny, which is a good thing. So today, we are going to specifically be talking about Florida and how it becomes a state. And before you can understand how Florida becomes a state, we have to go back and talk about this thing called the Northwest Ordinance. All right, and then we can dive into a little bit more with Florida. So let's look at the Northwest Ordinance. The Northwest Ordinance is an agreement for how a state can actually become a state, or a territory can become a state. Because back then in the West, we had all of these territories out here. And the thing is if you're a territory and you're not a state, you don't get to vote in Congress and you don't have a say. So there's a whole bunch of people living out here in the West that have no say in our government because they're not in a state, they're in a territory. So we set up some guidelines to become a state. And if you look right here are the guidelines to kind of become a state. You need 5,000 voting residents, so that's settlers that live out there, but you also have to have 60,000 free inhabitants. So these are people, you can't just count people that are slaves, right? You have to have 60,000 people living over there, and 5,000 of them have to be voting. But the big thing is this idea that in order to become a state, you have to have 60,000 people there first, all right? You also have to have a governor, but you have to have 60,000 people. That's the big thing. And that's really what the Northwest Ordinance said. So once we come up with this rule, we're actually going to get a whole bunch of territories in the West that will apply for states, which is awesome. So the rule to become a state is you have to have how many people? That's right, 60,000 people. And that's really what the Northwest Ordinance said. So we talked last week about the Adams-Onis Treaty, right? And that gave us Florida right down here. All right, nice little Florida. It's not real clear, but on this map you can see it's actually labeled a territory, all right? Which means that it's not a state. And we all know if you're not a state, you have no say in government. So they're going to want a say in government. They have more than 60,000 people. They have someone that they want to lead them, a governor. So they want to apply to be a state. But in this time in history, we have some issues. If you look at this map kind of shows the issue. The issue is all of the states that are up here in this light colored blue or this fluorescent blue, those are all free states, meaning they don't have slaves. Down here are all pink states, and that means they have slaves. So one thing that our Congress tries to do is to make sure that there's always the same number of free states as there are of slave states. So when Florida goes to apply, at first, it might mess up the number of free and slave states, so we have a little bit of an issue. But eventually, Florida will get admitted, and when Florida gets admitted as a state, they obviously are going to become a slave state because they're in the South. Why do you think the South has so many slave states? That's right. They have really good really good weather down there, and that's perfect place for plantations and all of those things. Where if you look in the north, the geography and climate is not that good. They do not have slavery up there. So we're going to get a lot of new states with Manifest Destiny that are going to be coming in the West, and also today you're talking about Florida, and the big thing is going to be, are they going to be a free state or are they going to be a slave state? But today specifically you're looking at Florida, And by the end of the day today, you should be able to talk about how Florida becomes a state. And obviously a big part of that is this idea of the Northwest Ordinance that says in order to become a state, you have to have how many people? That's right, 60,000 people. So today you are going to be looking at this picture that we keep looking at with Manifest Destiny, reading this document right here on Florida, answering these questions, and then participating in your discussion on Schoology. Thanks for being awesome. Thanks for always doing such a good job. If you have any questions, please message your teachers. Have a wonderful day.